Abusive and manipulative people have a favorite excuse that they like to use to avoid accountability for their destructive behavior. In this video, you're going to learn what it is and what it reveals about them. My name is Felucia, Dr. Felucia, and I'm a licensed psychologist and owner of Skill Set Counseling. And this YouTube channel focuses on the detection, prevention, and recovery from spiritual abuse, as well as other types of psychological abuse. So, onto the topic, what is this favorite excuse that abusive people like to use? Are you ready? They'll say that they did not mean to do what they did, and they will hide behind their intentions. They'll say, that wasn't my intention to do X, Y, and Z. I didn't mean it that way. Right. And but we all have times where we can be defensive. That's not necessarily an abnormal human behavior, right? We want to protect our egos and things like that. So there may be times where we can react defensively when confronted. However, with abusive people, they really latch on to this idea of intention, and they want to focus on how their intentions were not to hurt you. And discussing your intentions with someone as a part of an apology is not bad, right? But if someone comes to you and they're having an issue with something that you did, that's not necessarily the time to focus on intentions. And so when, abusive people do this and when they focus on, what they intended to do, it is actually a way of deflecting from their responsibility to take accountability for that situation or be accountable for their actions. When people hide behind the sentiment that they didn't mean to do something or that their intentions were good, what they're basically telling you is that their intentions outweigh the impact of their behavior. So let's say that you are maybe you have a friend who has these outbursts of really, just toxic words, language, basically verbal abuse, right? Let's say they engage in this verbally abusive behavior and you confront them about it and they say, well, they didn't mean to. Their intention was to whatever, X, Y, and Z. They might say that they were concerned about you and they wanted to share their concerns and they got carried away or whatever. And so the point of that is that when they focus on what they intended to do as opposed to the impact of what they actually did, then that makes it easy for them to hide behind that. Think about it. If someone insists that their intention was good, you can't argue, you can't disprove that, right? There's intentions are internal. And so it's an easy thing to hide behind. And again, I'm not saying that bringing up your intention in a conflict is a bad thing. It's not. There's miscommunication that can happen between people. And when people discuss their intentions, it can be part of a process of helping one party understand the other. The difference between healthy people and abusive and manipulative people is they put all their energy into their intention. And then they actually turn it around and make it so that you are the bad person because you didn't understand what their intention was. Um, and many of you have talked about this they've left comments about this on the channel. And when you talked about situations where you have confronted somebody about something and you ended up leaving feeling like you were the person that did something wrong. And people who, engage in this type of behavior, they will make themselves the victim a lot of times. And so you can go in saying, hey, I had a problem with this, I didn't like this, and they will spin the narrative in such a way where you are now the person at fault. And this just doesn't apply to them. When we think about spiritually abusive environments or any sort of, for lack of a better word, toxic system, there are enablers that support that system. So usually, a leader doesn't act solo. They have people around them that are going to defend their behavior, cover for them, and things like that. And it's the same thing regarding intention. So, let's say that there's something that happened and, you're in a spiritual environment, you bring up this person did X, Y, and Z. Enablers of that spiritual abuse or whatever other type of abuse will say, well, that person probably didn't mean it. And the focus of the conversation will shift to that person's possible, right? Because you can't prove their intentions, good intentions. And so when that shift is made and when the focus is, oh, they're a good person, they probably didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah. What that does is it makes you now the bad person. Oh, well, how dare you accuse this, upstanding citizen of doing this, this thing, right? And so you have to be very careful of that. When you are talking to somebody or confronting somebody about something or sharing something that bothered you, the more they hide behind the concept of intention, the harder it's going to be for you to get to the root of the issue. And I liken it to this. Think about somebody who was driving, right? And they had like the first time they had a seizure. And so they had a seizure for the very first time. They lost control of the car and the car ended up plowing into someone's shop, crashed the window, their stuff all over the floor. That person who was driving the car and lost control, did they mean to drive into that store? No, they didn't. At the same time, though, they are going to be accountable for restoring that store to where it was before. They're going to be accountable for the damage that they did, right? Their lack of bad intention doesn't magically make the store come back together, right? It doesn't work that way. And so it's very important that when you deal with manipulative people, and people who are abusive, watch out for that maneuver, right? And there are a few ways to deal with it, but before I get to that, it's also important to understand why they're focusing on intention reveals something negative about them. I'm going to explain why. Many of you have asked this question: what if somebody who is being spiritually abusive, manipulative, whatever it is, what if they don't mean to do that? And a lot of you have asked that question. I think it's a good question to ask. Um, if somebody does something and they do not mean to do it, for whatever reason the thing happened, there was miscommunication, if they truly care about you, they will also take into account the impact of their behavior. They will acknowledge it, right? And I've talked about this in one of the videos I have on apologies and why they mean less than you think. Anybody can say they're sorry, but somebody who is genuinely remorseful for their behavior, they're going to show different things, including trying to make restitution for whatever was lost, right? So in the case of the person that crashed into the store, they would make a way, or they would find a way to remediate that situation. And so if someone truly doesn't mean to do something, their attitude is going to be very different, right? They're not going to hide behind the good intentions that they had. They're going to address the impact of their behavior. And so when you are dealing with somebody who is manipulative or abusive, when they hide behind their intentions, what that is telling you is that they are focused on themselves and they believe that if they didn't mean to do something, then you shouldn't get offended by it. And that the impact of their actions is basically negligible, right? Just forget about it. Don't pay attention to it. It's almost as if they believe that their intention to do well erases the impact of what was done. And that is not true at all. And it reveals something about somebody that thinks that way, right? It shows that they are more concerned about protecting their image, as opposed to how they have hurt you, right? And for those of you who are abuse survivors, I'm sure that one thing about abusive people is that they rarely take accountability for their actions, right? Or if they do, it's just just paying lip service to it, right? I'm not saying abusive people never do that, but when, just from the experiences that I have had professionally and working with people and just observing how abusive people behave, that accountability thing is huge. And there always is some sort of excuse, right? Now, the good intentions is not the only excuse that they use. However, it's a common one, and it's one that you need to be very careful of, because if you're not careful, you will be in the position to not make the abusive person feel bad, right? They might start saying, well, I didn't mean to. I'm only trying to help. I care about you so much. And then now you are the one consoling them and telling them, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So, in essence, you're doing their dirty work for them. You're basically minimizing the impact of what happened to you because they didn't mean it. And so it sends the message that, you know what, they are of more value than you. And, when you think about the mindsets of abusive people, they hold to that sentiment, because if they believed that you both had equal value, then they wouldn't justify their mistreatment of you. So I really want you to pay attention to that. Now, again, are intentions important? Yes. And some of you, have, and I can tell in the comments, have, not all of you, but there are a few of you that have misunderstood that. I'm not saying that intentions are not important, but there's a time and a place to bring them up. If you are hiding behind intentions or using good intentions to erase the impact of behavior or shift the focus away from the impact and the damage of the behavior that's been done, and that's manipulation, that's abusive behavior. And a lot of times when people are in these situations, they will leave after an argument with somebody like that feeling even worse. They'll feel like, gosh, I must have done something to that person, right? If you are in the position where you have to console this person and tell them, oh, I know you meant well, it's okay, and whatnot, you're probably not, it's emotionally exhausting. You probably are not going to want to bring that up with that person again. And it also feels very invalidating. And that's why people who have been through abuse many times have a difficult time even accepting that they were abused, because it's never acknowledged. The root of the issue is never talked about. And again, this is not just abusive people that do this. People who are enablers of abusive people do this. So if you've if you've grown up in a family maybe where there's somebody who has some kind of destructive behavior, maybe it's an addiction or maybe it's whatever it is, there are going to be people that enable that person. And so they'll say, oh, well, they didn't mean it, they're trying their best. And so they want you to turn a blind eye to the damaging behavior because they didn't mean it, right? And so be careful of not only abusive people, but enablers of abuse and people that support abusive systems. People who engage in these behaviors are really connected to and invested in the success of that system. And so they're going to do whatever they need to do to protect the reputation of that abusive person. So I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. When you have been confronted with this idea of intention and good intentions, how have you dealt with it? What sorts of tips would you have for other people? And, just general comments about the video. I'd love to hear from you. If you would like to book a free consultation with me, go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, to book the free consultation. And I hope you have a wonderful day that is filled with peace. Bye-bye.